everyone. Welcome back in another episode of the Wobcast 2.0. It's yours truly. It's the partner and co-host Gyles, and we're back to the friendly confines of our normal recording locations after being on site and on location last week at the Star for the NFL draft. So lots to get to, lots to break down today. There's no one better to do it with than my partner and co-host Gyles. Let's bring him in right now. Hey, partner, how we doing?
Hey, happy Thursday. Ultimately,
sir.
1 week since we were down in Dallas. What a time. Incredible facility down there in Dallas. I mean, not to kind of poo-poo on what the Vikings have going on in Egan. I still think that's the best facility in sports. Dallas really knows how to show out.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I was thinking it was pretty festive there where we were. And anyone who saw the any of the videos that we posted on any of our platforms saw it, because we did sort of like a rapid reaction after the Vikings took McCarthy. I mean, they were picking like 26th or 24th, I think they were.
Yep.
I mean, it was still pretty festive there. They had a pretty cool setup for the draft party, and you just walked in there. Like, there was no tickets. You weren't being charged at the Star. So it was really pretty cool. And then, of course, the Cowboys end up trading back. So it was a little anticlimactic for Cowboys fans. But for us, it was a really fun place to sit there and watch the top 10 unfold. And then, of course, earlier in the day, Coach Zim was very gracious with his time and access to the facility and gave us a cool tour of the place. So it was really kind of a fun way to take in the draft.
Yeah, 100%. And I always appreciate Zim because sometimes he gets flack in the NFL and greater America media. And he is exactly who he is on the podium. He is that way behind the scenes. I just appreciate people that are authentic through and through. Like, what you see is what you get. He says what's on his mind. And he is, without a doubt, one of the most creative defensive minds, not only in the current NFL, but in a lot of NFL past. And it's always exciting to get access to a mind like that, because they took a little bit differently, and they really look at the lens of football and life a little bit differently. So it's always interesting to see those people, and it's exciting to see when when you're walking through the facility with Zim, how well respected he is. Because I think sometimes in Minnesota, some people trash on him for the latter half of his tenure here, but he is really a celebrated human being. A lot of people have a really good relationship with him. People get an instant smile when they see him. It's exciting to see him appreciated in a place like Dallas.
Yeah, I remember one of the first times with Zim in Minnesota, and we were at the Combine. And the way it works a lot of times, or at least the way it used to work, was, media would just sort of be around different places, hotel lobbies, hotel hallways, the convention center. Mm-hmm. And you're always sort of looking for time you can get to interview different subjects. And so we would always organize a time, sort of a time for local reporters only, to sort of huddle up with Rick and with Zim. And, they have the big podium interview with national media, right, that you always see on TV. But we'd always try and find time for them to get with just the local reporters who, dedicated resources to travel to Indy to cover the Combine and cover the Vikings. So, our PR director at the time, Bob Hagan, gets everyone huddled up in a hallway of the JW Marriott in Indianapolis. And, I'm there. I don't really ask them questions in that environment. I'm just sort of there in case he says something notable that we can use. But Bob and I are just kind of off to the side listening and watching this happen. And so they're asking him questions. And there's two gentlemen walk by who are clearly in Indy for the Combine, but it's not clear like who they are or who they're with. Everyone who's with the team has the team gear on. You can clearly tell they're with the Commanders, or with whoever. So they're both waiting, and they see Zim and they're waiting, and they're just sitting there. And this goes on for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And, finally Zim wraps up with the local media that's huddled up, and, there's Zim sees him and he goes over to him, and there's hugs and handshakes and fist pounds and whatever, like, good to see ya. And, they talk for 5 minutes, and these two guys were just so happy to see Zim. And so they sort of wrap that up and they leave. And so then Zim, Bob, and I start walking away, and neither Bob nor I knew who they were. which, Bob was in the league for 35 years and I was in for 15. So if we don't really know who they are, it's not obvious, and it was two players who played for Zim when he was in Dallas, and I'm like,
Oh.
That's pretty cool that they, like, everyone's busy there. You got to be places, but they literally just stood in a hallway for 15 minutes waiting for Zim to get done doing media so they could say hi to him, and I'm like, curmudgeon-y, crusty, old, crabby people that no one likes, like, you don't wait around for those guys. So even though that can be what you may perceive Zim to be, especially after a loss or after a bad season, like, he's, like, deep down, he's, people love him. And I thought that was a really good illustration of that. And you got to see that firsthand at the Star, and he is authentic. He is who he is, and he doesn't try to be anyone else. So he definitely, I'm not going to call him loose or non-stressed. I'm sure he's got plenty of stress. I'm sure there's plenty of expectation there, but he seemed very happy. Would you not say, in his current place, getting ready to coach the Cowboys this year?
I could not agree more. I mean, he gave us a full tour of the entire facility, top to bottom, from the back office all the way down to the cafeteria. And whether it was someone that was really important, like the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, down to someone that was serving the meals, people genuinely had a positive interaction where people would see him and smile, and he would light up and smile. And like, it's exciting to see that type of positivity in the air, because obviously Dallas Cowboys are America's team. They have a lot to root for. But inside the building, when you have that type of innate positivity, when like those connections don't just happen. Like, I've seen when people important walk in the room, sometimes people stand up straight. You don't get these innate smiles and just kind of insatiable joy coming out of people. That's authentic. And that's the type of culture you want to build in any football team.
Agreed. Well, hey, I mean, you'd be in a good mood too if you had Trevon Diggs and Micah Parsons on the edge for you, wouldn't you? Yeah. So.
The freight train's coming.
That's right. Well, maybe the Vikings did get a Micah Parsons-like player in the middle of the first round. So let's talk about that, Gyles. A lot to get to here today. I want to go through a few things. I have an idea of the next three biggest headlines that the Minnesota Vikings will have. So we're going to get to that at the end of the show. And we've talked a lot about the first two picks, J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner. So you and I are prepared for a word or two on every pick the Vikings made after the first round. So we're going to dive into that as well. But first, very quickly, the first two picks and the first round on Thursday night, let's rehash that. Obviously, we were at the Star. We watched the way the top 10 unfolded. It was very entertaining. There were a couple of times when, we were standing close to each other, next to each other. We look, we glance at each other like, whoa, I mean, of course the Michael Penix thing was one of those moments, but, I think we anticipated a trade or two happening that did not happen. So it was really a fun way to watch it unfold. And the J.J. McCarthy thing happens. The Vikings get their quarterback. That was, whether you thought it was May or McCarthy, you kind of knew they were going to end up with a quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think what really caught everyone by surprise, and I was talking to PA yesterday about this too, and he even, in the canvassing he did, talking to people he's connected to, Kevin Stefanski or Jonathan Gannon or whoever it might be in the league that we're all still connected to, no one thought or anticipated the Vikings getting Dallas Turner. So I want to sort of shift our focus, not away from McCarthy because he's worth talking about, but I think it's worth sort of digging into a little bit about the Dallas Turner selection, how it happened, and what it might mean for the Vikings. And that's one that definitely caused you and I to give a second look. Like that was an eye-opening moment when the Vikings end up with perhaps the best edge rusher in the draft.
Absolutely. And I think Kevin O'Connell would absolutely agree with us. I mean, the Vikings Entertainment Network released a video of Kwesi announcing, hey, we're going to go get Turner. And Kevin O'Connell was just ecstatic, like genuinely surprised. So when you think about your ability to go get someone potentially generational, if he works out in the way that some prospects are projecting, you got yourself a steal. I mean, there was a lot of NFL prospects that had Dallas Turner off the board by 6 or 7, hands down. And some even higher than that if there was a trade up, right? So you can hate on the draft capital required to go get it. But if you were to look at it through the lens of putting up that type of draft capital to go get someone at 6 versus getting them at 17, you would say, oh my gosh, you stole the draft, right? Yeah. So I think there's some really interesting elements there. And I mean, going into this offseason, I think it was no secret among us and the rest of the NFL Vikings community fan base. The Vikings were going to go get a quarterback, and more than likely we had to give up 11, 23, and next year's first to do so. Obviously, people speculated on whether it would be Drake May or it'd be J.J. McCarthy. There was a little steam about Jaden Daniels, but at the end of the day, we were going to trade up, get a quarterback, and give up this year's and next year's first-round picks, hands down, plus a little more. So the fact that you were able to get J.J. McCarthy, who was a guy on the list that you projected, still keep next year's first-round pick, and get the best edge rusher in this year's draft. I mean, even if you don't love Dallas Turner, he's at least top 3 in this year's NFL draft. I think he's the best. But even if you're wanting to play things even a little bit more realistic, Dallas Turner is a top 3 edge rusher in this year's draft, and you got him at 17, and you still have your first round pick next year. That is incredible mobility by Kwesi. Now, when you look at the individual trades, even pre-draft, when you were trading with Houston, it was, I guess, relatively, it was a relative consensus that we overpaid to be able to get the 23 overall pick. There was a kind of a projection from the consensus board that maybe we should have gotten a third rounder back, but we thought, hey, we're trying to go get a quarterback, so we're willing to overpay, right? So there was an overpay in scenario 1. When you take a look at going from 11 to 10, some people were speculating, oh, you overpaid to go from 11 to 10. Well, okay, that's potentially an overpay number 2. You went from 23 to 17. Some people think we overpaid. But at the end of the day, if those players hit, that doesn't matter at all because you got 2 of the most important positions in football. I think I would have been willing to give up next year's first to get both of those players. If you told me you could walk away with J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner and you need to give up next year's first, I would have given it you hands down willingly. I would have said, do I need to give you anything else? If I can get both of those players in this year's draft, let's do it. Now, I was a little bit bigger of a fan of Byron Murphy II, to be honest. We've talked about that from an interior defensive line standpoint, but we wanted defensive line help. We needed to be able to have the ability to go one-on-ones on the defensive line, and Dallas Turner is a freight train, much like Micah Parsons, in my opinion, for your ability to go win one-on-ones and go attack the quarterback. So I believe this is phenomenal. Now, if they don't become great, this will all blow up in my face and people will laugh at the name of Gyles. But I truly believe, until proven otherwise, these guys have a really good projection on excelling in the NFL this year.
Yeah, and from a narrative standpoint, Gyles, and sort of a momentum, and for whatever that's worth, how the fans feel about it, what the headlines are saying, and what is the mo going into a season, I really felt that the Vikings were in a compromised position from those standpoints because the Bears were going to have the number 1 overall pick, and they traded for Keenan Allen, and there's just some things going on there that are good. But more so because it looks like the Packers have another quarterback. And, of course, the Lions they have the division. So things were kind of getting away from the Vikings a little bit from the narrative standpoint, the perception, what's your win total in Vegas, what's the temperature of the fan base, who's going to be picking who to win. Like, it was getting away from Minnesota. And I thought the draft was Kwesi, putting a stake in the ground and being like, hold on a second. Like, this isn't over yet. Like, I really thought it was like a reinsertion of the team back in the competitive mix for 2024. So for whatever that's worth, I thought it was an important moment. And let's be honest. I mean, the first draft for Kwesi a couple years ago was not good. Right?
Objectively not the perfect scenario for him.
So this was a much different story. So I just think from a momentum standpoint and a perception standpoint, which is not worth as much as actual football results on the field, but it's all we have to go on right now until they start playing games. I thought it was a big moment for the franchise as well. A couple of really quick 2 other quick things here. And Pat, our buddy, the data scientist, as you refer to him, provided us with some meaty material that we can chew on. So a couple of things on McCarthy and Turner. How about the wins above average stat on Dallas Turner? Did you see that?
I did.
0.28 while at Alabama, which is essentially saying a quarter of a win, a little more than a quarter of a win, Dallas Turner is worth to your team last season. I think you'd be hard pressed if you take quarterbacks out. You'd be hard pressed to find numbers as big as that for a lot of players. That this guy is worth a quarter of a win over a 13. Remember, they only play 13 games.
Yep.
So obviously an impactful player for Alabama. That stood out to me. And then I'll let you take it from here. With McCarthy, I mean, to me, he's a winner. 27-1 as a starter, national champion. Like that experience of just winning a lot matters. Now, he's not the water boy. He's not, the right guard. He's not a free safety who's playing on a team that's winning a lot of games. He's the quarterback who's playing on a team that's winning a lot of games. So that really stands out to me. And then I like that he's a product of Jim Harbaugh. Like, I think Jim Harbaugh can be a little bit of a lightning rod person. Like, you might really not like him or you might love him. There's really not a lot of in between. And I tend to be more on the I really like him. Like, he had a great quote in the draft where he's like, hey, I know a lot of people thought we were going to take a wide receiver in the first round. Did you see this quote from him? He's like, I know a lot of people really thought we need to take wide receiver and take weapons in the first round, but around here we view offensive linemen as weapons. So we're really excited for the left tackle for Joe Alt. So I love that he's a product of J.J. McCarthy. So those are a couple of things that stood out to me about Turner and McCarthy.
100%. I think there's really, a lot of interesting takeaways for our first round beyond all the things that we mentioned. I mean, starting with Dallas Turner, call me a homer or a guy that leans too much into this type of mentality. But when I look at someone like Dallas Turner, he was mentored and coached by Jason Taylor. The Jason Taylor, NFL legend, Hall of Famer. If you have a guy like Jason Taylor coming in and saying, all right, Dallas, let's figure out how to go make this happen. And then you see the type of production that Dallas put on the field. I mean, he was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he led obviously the SEC in sacks. I believe he was 9th in the country for sacks overall. Obviously, I mean, he's the 2023 consensus All-American. This guy is a freight train, and he was trained by a freight train. If I'm going to look for any type of player with a motor that a legendary Hall of Fame guy with a motor says, hey, I want to mentor this guy, I think you got yourself a player, right? Especially when you bring him under the tutelage of Brian Flores. There's something there. There has to be. I mean, we traded up from 23 to 17 to go get him, and we mortgaged, obviously, a little bit of our future. We had 0 day 2 picks in this year's NFL draft. So you have to be pretty confident that he's a guy, and I would tend to agree with that. So Dallas Turner, welcome to Minnesota. Let's go attack the quarterback. Let's go meet there. That's super exciting. Obviously, with J.J. McCarthy, for all the reasons that you mentioned, I am in love with this pick because when you look at the last quarterback taken at 10, he worked out pretty well. Do you remember who that was?
Are you talking about NFL wide or just with the Vikings? No, this is the highest the Vikings have ever taken one. Mahomes was that. Okay, so the Chiefs traded up and took Mahomes. Yeah, that worked out okay.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, being facetious there, I'm not trying to make the comparison. Calm down, everybody. The purple shade glasses are off. But at the end of the day, when you look at guys that fall but still are taken in the top 10, I do think there is a little bit of an oomph behind them. There's a little bit of a kind of a chip on the shoulder where I want to go show you that I'm actually worth a much higher grade than that. And when you compare J.J. McCarthy and the infrastructure that he just stepped into for the Minnesota Vikings across all the other quarterbacks that were taken in this year's draft in the first round, for example, whether it's Bo Nix all the way to Caleb Williams, I think J.J. McCarthy and his skill set is the best fit for this specific offense and has the highest upside than any quarterback in this year's draft. All of them have strengths and weaknesses. All of them have trajectories and things that they do well and things that they don't. But I believe J.J. McCarthy steps into the Minnesota Vikings instantly as this year's best quarterback. From the draft.
Awesome. Yep. Awesome. I think that's a topic for us to banter about another day, Gyles, when we don't have, we really want to get through every pick the Vikings made. So we're going to get off of J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner right now and get on to the other guys. But I think we want to really dissect and figure out, do we think J.J. McCarthy will start this season? Do we think he should, and do we think he will? And if he doesn't, what does that look like? I think that's an interesting and fun topic to get to. And I think opinions will vary. I think opinions will vary on that among learned football minds. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, two people who both know the game very well could look at that same situation and come out with different opinions. So I think it'd be fun to talk about. Let's let the mini camp happen and get a couple practices under his belt and then talk about it. That'd be a fun talker. But let's move on to the other picks now. We'll start with Kyrie Jackson, corner from Oregon, Gyles, in the 4th round. Going through the data and the info that Pat shared with us, clearly an unheralded path, getting to Alabama and then to Oregon, where he was at a junior college and wasn't playing football. Then he's playing football. Outstanding season of production and a great outstanding grade for Jackson at Oregon this past season. And then lastly, the thing that stood out to me is Pat made a note: great length and explosiveness, but slow to recover when beat. That note, along with his height, weight, size, speed situation, reminds me of a former Viking.
Okay.
Xavier Rhodes.
Ooh.
So I haven't studied Jackson enough to make this comp. I'm just talking about his profile and what Pat is sharing with us. I'm like, it feels to me like I'm reading a Xavier Rhodes scouting report here. And that's very good. I loved Rhodes when the Vikings took him. It was a slow start for him, but he turned out to be an elite corner. So that's a very good comp. And that's who I think about when I think about Kyrie Jackson.
Are the roads now closed? I mean, are we bringing that back? I mean, I'm here for it.
Me too.
We should have asked Zim about that back when we were in Dallas. My goodness. I completely agree. I mean, when you look at this guy's performance across Oregon and then Alabama, obviously played under Nick Saban, he only got better year over year. He ended the Oregon stints at an 80.5 PFF grade. I mean, this guy did phenomenally. And obviously, he was a former teammate with Dallas Turner, so I like that connection. Yeah. He mostly plays, obviously, on the outside, but when you go from JUCO all the way to Alabama and then Oregon, and then you get drafted in the 1st round, or I'm sorry, in the 3rd round, you guys, I mean, you got a great scenario here. So really excited for what Kyrie brings to the table. The one concern I have for him is that he's a little bit old for what I would prefer, but I think because of the COVID years, I mean, you just got to take what you take. He's technically 24 years old. So I would prefer a little bit of youth out of a cornerback that you're going to take in this round. But like, if he performs, he performs. I don't care about your age.
Yeah, I mean, he's at a position population for the Vikings where there's opportunity to jump up and play and contribute right away. I'm not saying the cupboard is bare there, but at least there's potential that he can contribute right away in year 1 for him, which is his 24th year on earth. You can see a short runway for him to playing. So that's good. Okay, next pick, 6th round, all the way to the 6th round already. Walter Rouse. Background here, a little bit of a Robert Smith twist, biomedical engineering, and wants to pursue a medical career post football. So that's pretty cool. Got a smart cat here. Great experience, all at left tackle. No sacks allowed last year, Gyles. The one note Pat had here about him was he had to clean up his penalties. Other than that, though, pretty clean record and pretty good-looking prospect.
100%. I think this guy is exclusively taken to step in and be Christian Darrisaw's backup. Furthermore, this guy has some flexibility when playing inside as well at left guard. So when you think about having versatility and guys that can step in and play both positions, especially in today's NFL where offensive line is a prerequisite to win a championship, you got to have guys behind the guys, right? So, when I think about smart, intelligent players, that fits right into Kevin O'Connell's scheme for all the reasons that you mentioned. This guy had great performance. And when I think about our offensive line and where it was in years past and where it's worked its way up to, I think we're a team that can definitely help clean up penalties. We're a team that makes very few of those. And I believe that's exclusively because of coaching. So I'm excited to see what he does under our tutelage. So I'm here for it. I'm excited whenever we invest into the trenches, specifically in the offensive line. As Zim used to say, you can never have too many cornerbacks. I'm of the belief you can never have too many offensive linemen. Let's get the best guy, 5 guys on the field.
Yep. All right. Next, 6th round, pick 203 overall, a kicker, Will Reichard. Gyles, a kicker. Was the data right here? Did he not miss at all in 2020? That's what I read.
I don't believe so. Yeah.
That is incredible.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, obviously
Yep.
has kicked in a lot of big games, right? With pressure. He played at the University of Alabama under Nick Saban. Um, as I was kind of going through his profile and notes from Pat, I kind of got off onto my own thing, and I just the philosophy. I like this from a philosophical standpoint, Giles, of using draft picks, fifth, sixth, seventh round, using draft picks on kickers and punters. As a philosophy, I can get on board with it. Now, I think some people would scoff at it because why waste? They would say waste a pick on a kicker. Uh, I get it, but if you think about it, I mean, kickers and punters literally touch the ball a lot during the game, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in the kicker's case, they can be responsible for points on the scoreboard. And in the
Mm-hmm.
kicker and punter's case, they are directly responsible for where the opposing team begins its next possession. So when you look at it from
Mm-hmm.
that standpoint, as a philosophy, I like taking kickers and punters later in the draft, using a draft pick on those players. The Vikings did
Mm-hmm.
that this year with Reichard. They already have a kicker on the roster, so obviously a competition will ensue. But your thoughts on taking a kicker and on taking this particular kicker?
So I definitely have two sides of a brain about this because although I don't inherently disagree with your thought process on drafting a kicker versus taking an undrafted free agent, I do
Yeah.
think it is very difficult for a college kicker to translate directly to the NFL in an absolute certainty, right? Like it's just a different game, right? The hash is a
Yeah.
little bit wider. Like there's some things that translate, and it's hard to project. That's all I'm trying to say. It's definitely a hard thing to project. So if you
Yeah.
feel like you at Egan and for the Minnesota Vikings can help get a fast track to having some certainty there. If you feel like he's the guy, then go for it because of all the reasons that you mentioned. If you're trying to play chess in the NFL, having a great kicker is one of the ways that you can be able to do that. So if he's able to translate, I'm absolutely here for it because when you look at his stats through his entire life, I mean, this guy started kicking when he was in the 6th grade. He was Alabama's number 1 kicker and I think the number 2 punter. Like this is a guy that's been kicking for his entire life. He's not a guy that was like playing soccer and they're like, hey, come over and kick for us. This guy has been a kicker since he came out of the womb. This guy has technically scored more points than any other kicker in NCAA history. Now,
Crazy.
I do want to kind of temper that excitement a little bit. He has kicked for longer than most people in the NCAA. This guy's a little bit old for a kicker, but I don't care if you're 50 years old kicking. If you can kick it through the uprights, let's go for it. He scored 547 points all throughout NCAA history. I think he was all USA high school football team. He was the nation's number 1 kicker coming out of high school. This guy is the epitome of what you want in a kicker, right?
Yeah.
Amazing success when it comes to putting it through the uprights. So if that can technically translate into the NFL, there's a chance we just stumbled upon a Justin Tucker, right? If you went into this year's draft saying, hey, we're going to spend a 6th round pick to get Justin Tucker, would you do it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
I would too. So if you look at it from that point, if he does translate, we got ourselves a guy. And I think if you're looking at most NFL infrastructures, they can definitely range the spectrum in terms of infrastructure to best support a rookie kicker. I think we have that current infrastructure when you think about putting him into a best position to succeed. Obviously, the Vikings have a track record of drafting kickers and them not working out. Obviously, the infrastructure has changed for a variety of reasons, but I think Will Reichard best fits into this scenario. Plus, if you're a guy that can compete at that level with that type of performance under Nick Saban of all people, I think you're going to be just fine in the NFL.
Agreed. I mean, there's already a lot of pressure playing college football, especially in the South, but it's 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. The dial is turned all the way up when you're at Alabama playing for Nick Saban, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Next, 7th round, 230 overall, an offensive lineman, guard center combo, Michael Juergens. Mm-hmm. Played a lot in college, Gyles. Five years in college, but played a lot, especially the last 3 years where he started most of the games. A decorated, accomplished player at every level, and going to be inserted into a part of the Vikings offensive line that I would say, with due respect to those who are already there, is weak, is an area where there's room for growth, there's opportunity, there's a need of depth, and there's even a starting spot or two that could be there. So Michael Juergens, a late round pick, but a chance to be on the team.
I completely agree. I think there's actually, I don't want to say a high likelihood because I do want to temper expectation, but there is a realistic shot that he starts on the offensive line come week 1. I actually do think so. I think at left guard, obviously, that's a position where we do not have an existing starting left guard unless we re-sign Dalton Reisner. But when you look at his ability to perform, just pulling up the grades for him. Jurgens here. I just had it open. I apologize. But he did pretty phenomenally when you look at all of his performance. Let's see here. Sorry, Michael Jurgens. So obviously he came from Wake Forest, which is, all due respect to the Demon Deacons out there, it's a relatively nobody school. But when you look at his performance and look at his competition, he went up against some interesting bodies. And he had an 82.5 grade across the board. He was amazing in pass protection, even better in run blocking. But when you think about a left guard to replace it, if he can mimic that performance, it's great. Now, I think that's the real question mark when it comes to evaluating offensive linemen. When you look at the competition, right, interior defensive line or edge rushers on the other side, what's the level of competition? And he showed up. He did great, right? Now, then a lot of people then ask the follow-up question, well, what was the actual true strength of the edge rushers? And they weren't necessarily that great. I don't think they were poor, but I don't think they were that great. So then you have to take into the third level question. All right, was he good because he played against bad competition, or was he just playing at an elite level in kind of a sub-tier competition? And I do truly believe it was the latter. I think this guy could have played in a much bigger school and still performed based on his performance here. So if I'm right, which is definitely a big if, don't get me wrong here, but when you're looking at evaluating offensive linemen, this is something I definitely hold near and dear. It's something I like to do. I definitely think this translates over to the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, it's predicated on how you can work with Darrisaw and Bradbury at center. But I do think this translates to the NFL, and I think he has a good shot to start at left guard.
Nice. That would be a good find in the 7th round if that ends up happening for the Vikings. Definitely an area of opportunity for them. All right, let's go across the way in the trenches then and analyze the last pick the Vikings made in the 2024 NFL Draft. That was in the 7th round, 232nd overall. Defensive lineman, shading toward the interior for sure, Levi Drake Rodriguez, from a school I've never heard of, Texas A&M Commerce. So Prospect X by The Athletic, Gyles, as the most overlooked prospect in the draft. Hey, this guy, the profile here is the profile of a guy who you can't, like, flashes at camp, like Mr. Mankato, flashes at training camp, and you can't wait to see if he can translate that to the preseason games. That's the profile and the path I see for Levi Drake Rodriguez. Really cool draft day video for him when he got picked. His family was all around him going nuts. Kwesi and O'Connell could barely hear him talking. So that was really awesome. Definitely a guy here that's going to be a 3-tech and play inside. Doesn't sound like a 2-gapping nose tackle. Doesn't sound like an explosive guy off the edge only. Definitely a 3-tech, maybe inside 5-tech, someone who can help bulk up the Vikings on the interior, which is something you and I have both talked about them needing.
Yep. I completely agree. Now, I will say this is the one guy I haven't been able to view any tape on because finding Texas A&M tape is proving to be rather difficult, specifically for the Commerce lines there. But at the end of the day, when you look at his performance, and I'm reading all the different prospects' analyzation of his performance, this guy is pretty decent. Now, maybe that doesn't translate, and maybe we're just going to be led askew here. But in 2023, he had 7 sacks. He had an 89.5 PFF grade. He had a 91 pass rush grade. I mean, based on all the words that you're kind of aggregating about what people are saying about him, the number one word about this guy is motor. And like, if you can help perfect technique, which when you have someone like Brian Flores and our kind of very specific defensive scheme, if you can teach good technique, I will take a motor guy all day long. If he has the same amount of oomph and the first snap and the last snap, that's a thing that can tire out both physically the offensive lineman you're playing, but also the mentality. Like, this guy won't quit. Levi, please stop. Please give us a break, right? So if you can get him to translate his actual production, I think this could be a really good steal for the draft.
Yep, agreed. All right, that does it for the draft pick analysis. Gyles and I will get into the undrafted free agents next week when we record the next episode of the Wobcast 2.0, so stay tuned for that. Before we wrap it up, though, Gyles, I wanted to give you what I think will be the next 3 biggest headlines for the Minnesota Vikings. I'll give them to you, and then you can react, and we'll talk about it. But The next three biggest headlines for the Minnesota Vikings will be the following.
In this order?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, all right. Yep.
I can go in the order. Yes, I'll go in order.
Let's hold your feet to the fire.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
You're on the record
next
here
three.
now.
Yes. Next three biggest headlines for the Minnesota Vikings in order. Number one, when and who the Vikings play in London this year. The Vikings return to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They're 3-0 in the International Series. They will play across the pond this fall. I believe that it'll be on Sunday, October 6th against the Jets. That's my guess. That's the weekend of the Twin Cities Marathon here locally. And I think the Jets-Vikings matchup is a good one to put over in London. So the next biggest headline for the Vikings is when and who they play in London. The next biggest headline for the Vikings following that will be the 2024 schedule release, which will happen, I believe, the second week of May. Last year it was on May 11th, Gyles. I think it'll be right around there, if not earlier. Select games will be released ahead of time. The Black Friday games, the Christmas Day games, the season opener, etc. We already know that Philly and Green Bay are playing in Brazil on September 6th. So some things will start to come out a little bit early, but that'll be the next biggest headline, I believe, for the Minnesota Vikings. And then finally, third, in terms of big headlines coming up for the Minnesota Vikings, and the one I think that will get Gyles the most excited, a Justin Jefferson extension. I think that is coming, Gyles. I think that will come either best case scenario right before the mandatory minicamp, which will mean Justin Jefferson will be at minicamp, or right before training camp. Those are the next two sort of soft deadlines for a contract extension, and I do believe that is coming. As a headline for the Minnesota Vikings is a very lucrative Justin Jefferson contract extension. So your reaction and thoughts to those three big headlines coming up for the Vikings?
Well, starting with the last one, I believe that is a big Christmas gift to not only myself, but to Justin Jefferson. Happy payday, but also Merry Christmas to us. We got ourselves a long-term number one wide receiver, the best in the business, Justin Jefferson. Yep. Glad to have you back here in Minnesota. I hope he gets the bag. I hope he doesn't get the absolute bag for the sake of our ability to go sign other players, but like he deserves it. I'm a big proponent of celebrating success when success is earned. I know some people like to celebrate success until it's had. I think he deserves every penny he's getting, and he should absolutely get it. I think anyone else that has otherwise opinions are just jealous. Like, good for him, glad for him, excited to have him on the roster. He's definitely part of our roster. And I definitely agree with you. I think it's happening. I think especially now with the JJ McCarthy drafting, I think we got ourselves a long-term QB1 and a long-term wide receiver one. So when you translate that to them and they're playing overseas across the pond, off the record, which we're kind of on the record, but off the record, who do you think it'll be?
I think the Jets make a lot of sense.
Okay.
I mean, so we'll lay out the universe of possibilities here. It's your road opponents for the season. Okay. So for the Vikings, that is, I have the list right here. Obviously, it's your division opponents, right? Chicago, Detroit, Green Bay. I think it's very unlikely that the league will put a division game in London for you. So taking them out, I predicted it's the Jets, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. If not them, you've got the Falcons as a possibility, and that's juicy for obvious reasons, right, with Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
You've got the Colts, the Texans, the Cardinals, or the 49ers. So a handful of possibilities. Cardinals, Niners, Colts, Texans, Falcons, Jets. I'm thinking they're going to want to put the Falcons in a more traditional slot, Gyles.
Yep.
A Monday night, a Sunday night type of situation here at US Bank Stadium. Cousins, it's just a more complete storyline if Cousins plays his old team in his old building. You're not all the way there if the game is not at US Bank Stadium. So I think you leave that one.
That's fair.
I think you leave that one in Minnesota.
Yep.
And the sexier, juicier matchup from a personnel and a headline standpoint is the Jets when you look at Cardinals, Niners, and then the two AFC South teams. So I think it's the Jets, and I think it's the weekend of the Twin Cities Marathon. That's my prediction. How about you?
Yep. I think the Jets make a lot of sense. As much as it would be cool to see the Atlanta Falcons, and obviously there's a lot of Vikings personnel that have moved over to the Atlanta Falcons on the front office standpoint.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
think the Jets are maybe the more appropriate answer. So I think you're absolutely correct. I think the Jets are where it's at. The interesting answer is who will win if it is the Jets overseas. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers will be back in green. He'll be healthy and he'll be ready to sling it around. Does he make a resurgence? I mean, what does he look like at this age?
I think he does. I think Aaron. I'm psychoanalyzing Rodgers a little bit here.
Yep.
There's just a lot of similarities to him and Favre in the career arc situation, right? But a difference there is I think Rodgers will demonstrate the ability to stop, to retire before he falls off the edge.
That's
like
fair.
In 2010, unfortunately, largely due to injury but also age, we really saw a version of Brett Favre that was so beneath the standard that he had set up until that point. And I love Brett for being willing to do that for the Vikings and for himself. But it was tough to watch in 2010. I do not think Rodgers has I don't think he could stand to see himself look like that. So
I would tend to agree with you. Yeah.
If he loses his ability to be a star, I don't think he'll play. So therefore, if Rodgers is playing, I think that means he's going to play well. So I see him. I see the Jets being a factor in the AFC East, and I see that being a tough game for the Vikings. And while I hope it's J.J. McCarthy and Justin Jefferson and T.J. Hawkinson and 40 points a game, that Vikings-Jets game is an under game. That's a low-scoring defensive grinder of a game.
That is a perfect segue into secret option D, or the potential secret number 4 next step for the Minnesota Vikings, or things to drop. Next steps are, things that'll be a surprise move.
What is it?
There hasn't been a lot of publicized steam around this, but there is a strong conversation happening behind the scenes for Tyler Boyd to come to the Minnesota Vikings. So when you think about your 3 wide receivers plus TJ Hawkinson and Aaron Jones, does that further build your ability to go chase a championship? Obviously beat the Jets in London, but also, what the Bears are building over in Chicago. Do you foresee us signing a wide receiver like Tyler Boyd? We have the cap space for it. We have $16.6 million as of today. Obviously we haven't signed our rookie class yet, but if you take 6 to 10 million there, obviously we have less than normal in terms of number of picks. Could you go sign someone like Tyler Boyd and bring him into the building?
I think you need to, Gyles. I've said I still think wide receiver is a need, and I like Brandon Powell, but I think you're asking too much of him to be your 3rd receiver. I think he needs to be your 4th option. I think you have a hole at WR3. You're awesome at 1 with Jefferson. You're very good at 2 with Addison. You're elite with Hawkinson, healthy at tight end. But at WR3, I don't think you have a guy that is high end. And I get it. You can't be high end everywhere, but you've got some cap space and you have an offense led by Kevin O'Connell. So I think this is who you are. Like, it's more important to be high end at wide receiver 3 than it is to be high end at free safety. Because of who you are as a team. So we talked about free agents who are still available that the Vikings could sign pre-draft or post-draft. We did that episode before the draft, Gyles, and I had 2 receivers in my top 5. I believe you did as well. You had Michael Thomas on there, and we talked about him. We talked about Tyler Boyd. We talked about Odell Beckham Jr. These to me are not high-end wide receivers right now, but they're high-end wide receiver 3s right now. Yes. If you grade it on a curve, I love it. I think he's got Tyler Boyd, I'm talking about, has familiarity with the offense because he's played for Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, who came from the Rams, just as Kevin O'Connell did. So the same could be said for OBJ. I think he has that as well. So yeah, I think I don't know that they're interested in Boyd or not. I don't have any knowledge of that. But I do think wide receiver 3 is an a spot where they can get better, and I would hope that they would fill it with a veteran player.
My, oh my, 3 deep. I mean, you're really trying to replicate what the Bengals have done, but you could make a pretty strong argument that when it comes to the timing of when the Cincinnati Bengals had their running back in Joe Mixon and then the 3 wide receivers, they were already starting to pay people elsewhere and didn't have a solid defense, and their offensive line was a little bit in shambles. So you can make an argument that this is the upgraded Cincinnati Bengals model between who you've drafted, who you've brought in the building, but really slinging it from a 3 wide receiver deep scenario. That would be a whole heck of a lot of fun. You have to believe games are getting flexed to get us into prime time.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. And I think the detractors to this idea, Gyles, that we're talking about would point out name all the who was the wide receiver 3 for the Chiefs last 2 years. Can't name him. It's like, I get it. But they had Mahomes.
Yep.
WR3 is a little less important when you have Mahomes, such an elite player. Yes, their identity is offense and scoring points, just like the Vikings is, which is why the Vikings need as many weapons as possible. But when you have Mahomes, an average guy at WR3 becomes a high-end guy. The Vikings don't have that. The Vikings need weapons. And Hawkinson is not Hawkinson yet, and he's not going to be in week 1. He's not going to be in month 1, most likely.
No. Yep.
So you really are down. You don't have a bona fide wide receiver 3, and you don't have a bona fide tight end to start the season. And so I think you bring in a veteran. If he's got scheme familiarity, even better. Tyler Boyd, OBJ fit the bill. Michael Thomas does not from a schematic standpoint, but from a production and a reliability standpoint, he does. And another thing with these guys, these sure-handed guys, and then guys with range, like Michael Thomas, is if you're dealing with J.J. McCarthy, a rookie, or you're dealing with Sam Darnold, you've got guys who are those inaccuracy erasers that you talk about, Gyles. Those 3 guys, Thomas, Boyd, and OBJ, part of their profile is helping quarterbacks be more accurate by making catches that the average receiver may not make. So I know another name you mentioned was Hunter Renfrow. That would be acceptable to me. But I think it's got to be somebody other than Brandon Powell. Again, agreed. Brandon Powell can run routes for you and can make catches for you and return punts for you. I'm happy with that, but not as WR3.
Yeah, completely agree. I think sometimes people get too high on the idea of end of season W's, end of season wins, and how that's your ability to go to the playoffs, and that's when wins count the most. But wins at the beginning of the season count as well. You need a win at the beginning of the season if you want to actually have a record to get into the playoffs. So it's important that we don't just completely disregard the front end of the season when it comes to TJ Hawkinson will be back. Let's wait until he's back to really pursue things. You need to win the whole season for this thing to work.
That's right. All righty. My notebook is empty, my man. How about you?
No, I'm excited for schedule release. That'll be really exciting to see when and where we're going to play things, how many primetime games. The Vikings might be stepping up in terms of national media presence, and I'm here for it.
Me too. It's got to be 4. Now, 4, 5, or more. I think the idea, and we'll get into this next week or the week after, the idea that Darnold would be the starting quarterback might knock you down a peg or two. If the networks knew it was J.J. McCarthy, they may be more inclined to make it 5 or max him out at 6. But I do think it's almost a handful at least. I mean, 3 at a minimum, probably 4, I would say. And we will find that out here in the next few weeks, and that'll be exciting. And there'll be lots of other fun, exciting stuff to talk about here on the Wobcast 2.0 as well. And Gyles and I will be here for that, and we hope you're along for the ride. If you've made it all the way through this episode of the Wobcast 2.0, we thank you. That was a long one as we broke down every pick the Vikings made in this year's draft. In the next episode of the Wobcast 2.0, we'll take a look at some undrafted free agents, and we'll analyze next week Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy and sort of try to project what their production and their results could be as rookies and see who may have a beat on 2024 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. See if McCarthy or Williams can get their hands on it and who has the better chance. So all of that coming up next week. That's it, though, for today. On behalf of Gyles, this is Wobby signing off for now. We encourage you to like, follow, subscribe, and comment. Engage with the Wobcast 2.0. You can do that wherever you do it with all your other favorite football content. Google Play, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. We are there. Join us in the conversation. Once you do, we'll see you there. On behalf of Gyles, this is Wobby signing off for now. Until next time, Skol Vikings.